All right, hi everybody. We're going to get started in just a minute. We're going to let everything flow in. Hi, Zach.
Hey, how's it going, Lane?
Good, good. Good to see you.
Hey, good seeing you too. Been looking forward to this.
Yeah, same. I know we chat off and on periodically, but it's nice to have a formal little interview here. So,
Yeah, yeah, it'll be really cool. I'm excited about it, especially with a writing community, being involved in that
oh yeah,
in a bit.
we're going to let a few more people flow in now that it's 6:01, and then we'll get started in just a second. Dan,
Okay.
thanks for joining us again. I know I love the bookshelf too. It's nice. Change of pace for me. I'm now back in Eastern time zone here in Kentucky, and have a bookshelf and a little fireplace we brought with us. So got to keep things festive.
All right.
So we will get started in just a second.
All right. Cool. Let's get comfortable. I was tempted to make tea, but I realized that people probably don't want to listen to me slurping for an hour. All right.
All right, cool. I think we'll get started. I'll do a little introduction, and then we'll get going.
All right. Cool.
Awesome. So, first off, hello again, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Today is day 6 of 12 of the 12 Days of Delivery Company, the 12-day launch event celebrating the upcoming release of my debut novel, The Delivery Company. So just to give you an idea of my book, it's a young adult dystopian novel focusing on two teenagers brought up in different sides of the wall in a facility that was created by the government to create the ideal children for families who can't have them or want a different child. And those who aren't kept as replacements are thrown out into the wild, and those are known as rejected. So Anna and Styx become team members, and they try to take down the delivery company. So that's a very brief overview of the book. But tonight is not about me as much as it is about my guests. So every night, as you know, I will be interviewing a different author or indie publishing professional and doing a giveaway of one of their books or another resource. And tonight, that happens to be the Scrivener writing software, so stick around. Tonight, I am pleased to be interviewing writer and story consultant Zack Jenkins. Zack, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me on. This is really great. I'm very excited about it.
Absolutely. I'm just going to give everybody a little bio, and then we'll get it going. So Zack Jenkins is a writer, digital artist, robotics technician, audio engineer, creative consultant, world traveler, and part-time occult oddities and taxidermy salesperson from the chilliest northernmost edge of Colorado. He has worked with many young and novice writers over the years, helping them to sculpt their stories into works they can be proud of. His mother, nurse, comedian, traveler, and writer, and father, philosopher, artist, gourmet, and musician, were the ones responsible for exposing his larval form to the endless wonders of the universe long ago, and he is exceedingly grateful for their influence. So Zack, thank you so much for joining us, and give us a little bit more information about yourself, where you're living right now, and what you've been doing during the quarantine.
Well, I've been living up here in Fort Collins for, oh geez, 9 years now. I'm realizing, wow, that's a long time. Um, During this quarantine has been a really interesting experience for me because, theoretically, you think it'd be the perfect time for like, oh, this is a great time for like creative process. In some ways it is, but I think that, people have been going through a lot recently. And so it's kind of disrupted a lot of the creative process, especially like trying to socialize and get out. And, as somebody who loved to people watch and spend a bunch of time in town and, talk to folks and get together, it's been, it's been hard, but there's been a lot of great stuff that's come out of it, too. Because it's kind of allowed me, specifically this kind of a lot of time to think about myself,
Mm-hmm.
and like really dig into my mind and how I've been feeling about just the state of the world and myself. And inevitably, I think that's great, just for personal health. So, you know, good stuff can come out of it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, for myself, I know I was glad to have the quarantine a little bit, and obviously not happy about it, but it happened to come at the right time for me to for all the healing from the surgeries and such, but also giving me ample time to really focus on the edits for my book. So as you know, it's giving me a good amount of time to get going and get ahead of the game. So
Yeah, editing. It's, I think, yeah, that first edit aside, it's the first draft and first edit are absolutely miserable in my
Hmm.
experience. Great. Can't have a book without them, but boy.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Zach, can you talk a little bit about your journey into writing, but also how you got into being a story consultant, how you went from putting ideas onto the page to helping others do the same?
It started off when I was really young. I listened to, thanks to my dad, who is, extremely literate and introduced me to a lot of really interesting stuff. It started with listening to the radio adventure shows from ZBS Media, The Incredible Adventures of Jack Flanders and Ruby the Galactic Gumshoe, which were absolutely fantastic because not only were they, about like a detective in space
Hmm.
and a guy who travels to a different dimension with flying pirate ships through a velvet chair, but it also was interlaced with Eastern philosophy throughout the entire thing. And that was kind of their motive, was to bring Eastern thinking to audiences in the West via the use of media. And my dad majored in philosophy. So I kind of started off like learning about the just humanity and the stories we tell and our histories and that sort of thing. And it was really good for me then. And then when I started really getting into reading, in elementary school, I was kind of drawn to more macabre stuff. And that really
Hmm.
started with Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark, which is, so many
Yep.
people love that book. And it was such a joy when I found that way in the back of my elementary school library before they found it and banned it. Um, and yeah, so that kind of kicked it off. And I got interested in writing in like not as seriously as I would have liked, but when I really started picking up was about 10th grade, I think. I had written short little stories throughout my life. I remember the first one was in first grade, and it was about like this portal that opened behind the chalkboard in my class. So I'd been doing little bits and pieces there, but I really started thinking, I could do this. Like I wanted to do it.
Hmm.
Um, so that's kind of where it kicked off. And the story consulting thing is a little more interesting because after a while, I was kind of beating my head against the wall for a long time, just trying to force myself into creativity. I kind of fell into that. There's a lie that a lot of young artists tell themselves where it's like, oh, I have to be completely original and I don't have to, really listen to anybody, or, I fell into that trap.
Right.
So after a while, I kind of started interacting with other authors, other young authors. I was probably 17 or so at the time. And I started posting little stories on Reddit, and I got good feedback. Like people were like, "This is pretty decent," and I
Oh.
was like, "Oh, that feels good. That feels good on my ego. That'll boost it a little bit." And that's where it started. Was kind of this back and forth with people on there. I got involved with this subreddit called Destructive Readers,
Hmm.
which is you read a story and you give honest critique, and then they do the same for you. You have to post a story. Oh no, you have to review first before you can post. So
Right.
that's kind of where that started happening, when it was kind of this uh, like a give and take between other people, and it felt really good. It was rough at first, just because you start when other people are starting to give you feedback, you start to realize like, oh, I'm not this perfect, amazing, like a world class author. They're like, no, you're young and you have a lot to learn,
Yeah.
which can be humbling, but good. You feel good in the end. And from there, I started just talking with people. I found people who seemed interesting, either in meet space or online. And we just started talking stories. And eventually, I started realizing, like, oh, I wasn't as good with producing the amount of work that other people could, but I loved the structure of stories and the study of storytelling. And I'd been doing
Hmm.
that for years and years and years, ever since I was a kid. And I realized I could actually apply that. I could actually get in and talk to people and give them ways to sculpt their stories in a way that was true to what they were trying to say without somebody else writing it for them, and really
Right.
kind of digging into what they wanted to say. And, I have to make it clear, I'm not an editor for grammar or sentence structure or something like that. I can say this feels, fast paced. How can you change that? Or what about this with this character? Um, But it was, yeah, I just started online, and then over time, I just made more and more friends, and they started sending me their stuff, and we started, some of us would talk like actual interviews, some of it was just back and forth, and via text or writing.
Right.
But yeah, and that started, God, about 10 years ago. Time flies. And that was, I, we all make mistakes too. And giving critique is such a hard thing to do, especially when
Mm-hmm.
you're kind of starting off with it. And I remember the first thing I ever critiqued, it was this like story about a squirrel that this person had written. And I feel horrible. I was way too hard on that guy because I was young, I was inexperienced. I wasn't mean, I wasn't trying to be mean, but it wasn't very constructive. I was just like, oh, this doesn't sound very good or whatever, and it kind of broke his spirits a little bit. And so I have carried that weight with me ever since, and it really kind of helped me redefine how I should be approaching these sorts of things. Um, so, I won't say that I'm not without fault, but that
Right.
was, a long time ago, and I feel like it's been an up and up since then, and everybody's been really great. I'm still friends with a lot of people that I've talked to online, and, helped write quite a few stories. Some of them just fanfic, some of them, that people wanted to get published. I'm not sure if they did. A lot of us didn't keep in contact.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been couple dozen people, 20 something at this point. I can't give
Over
you an
10 years, that's a good amount of people. Yeah.
Yeah. Some
And
of
you
it
feel
would
like
be,
you're learning a lot, you said, right?
oh,
Do you feel like
absolutely.
you have this metaphorical squirrel sitting on your shoulder, just telling you like, hey, remember me?
Oh,
Don't do
absolutely.
that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it's very much that. It's the little whisper in the back of my head to always be nice. Think of the people that you're talking to. Um, but yeah, it's been a really fun journey so far. It'll continue to be a fun journey
Hmm.
as time goes on. But that's me in a nutshell. Uh,
Yeah.
with that journey.
Now, as far as your writing goes, can you talk a little bit more about your writing style, how you generate ideas, and then what time of the day seems to be best for you usually? Morning, night, middle of the night? When does inspiration usually strike and produce the most?
Well, it's a little bit variable. It tends to be in the middle of the day, which is
Mm.
unfortunate because that's when I work. So,
Right.
all these ideas in the middle of my work day, and I'm like, I can't write. Um, but story generation for me is a very scattershot process. I
Hmm.
don't, some people think very linearly, and I don't. I really don't. I like to just write a million ideas and kind of pick out which ones feel truest to the story that I'm trying to tell.
Right.
Because, it's easy to get stuck in this is what this story needs to be. And I did that a lot. Like with my first NaNoWriMo, that book was a mess. But it was, I kind of had this um, just dogmatic view of what it had to be. I was like, no, I can't stray from this idea, even though it wasn't working.
Right.
It was so easy to just become obsessed with, some ideal of perfection or, adhering too closely to it. And then
Hmm.
I just went the opposite direction. I was like, that doesn't work. So now I'm going to write out a whole bunch of ideas for this book. The beginning, inciting incident, the midpoint, climax, denouement.
Right.
And I would write, 10, 20 of those and say, okay, these two or these three are closest to what I think the story should be. It feels most like um, the message I'm trying to get across or the feeling that I'm trying to get across.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very organized chaos sort of thing because I can't free write. I cannot do pantsing.
Yeah.
People are very talented and they can do that. I am not. I need to get ideas solidified, written out from there. But yeah.
Yeah, you're very much a plotter, from everything I know, from
Hmm.
our personal relationship
Hmm.
and even our professional relationship too. I can tell that you very much love to have that structure within which to work, and I
Hmm.
think that's good. I think it took me a while to realize that that I also needed some structure, at least, you know, because my first draft, I remember writing it, and I was writing chapter a day almost, and um, all while traveling, doing a musical theater show, and giving these chapters to this random guy to read to give me feedback because he was interested in the story. But from there, I was like, I 4 or 5 drafts later, I was like, okay, from now on, I need an outline. It has to be detailed, but I can be free within that
Yeah,
outline. So, and
yeah,
then for me, that's how I have to work, is basically build a fence, but feel free to, you know, like around a plot of land, a plot being a pun for there, I guess. But then be free to roam that land within the fence. You know, you'll discover new areas on that land, but you're still within the confines of the area that you're familiar with, and you know
yeah.
where you're going.
Yeah, that's and honestly, I think that's kind of the best way to do it. Because again, you don't want to get into this trap of it has to be this way.
Right.
You know, if somebody like Brandon Sanderson, I think, can be very, you know, he's almost mathematical in the way
Mm-hmm.
he tells stories. And I'm not quite that. I'm closer to what you described, you know, have like a pretty clear idea. And then, you know, being able to go, you know, that doesn't work. You know, just kind of being honest about like, if I don't want to force this in here.
Right. Yeah. And I know from our chats as well that that you prefer to generate as much as possible, right? Before you have to make a decision, because you'd rather have too many ideas to choose from than not enough, right?
Yeah, because I put a lot of time into the beginning because it saves a lot of time down the line. Because if you can just get a lot of ideas and write them out, even if like some don't fit, you can just go, that's going into these don't fit but are interesting pile.
Right.
And you know, you have those and you have a clearer idea of what you want. Because if you're just kind of, you know, struggling along in the dark, that doesn't, um, it causes a lot of problems after the first draft.
Yes.
You know, once again, why I can't pants. Uh, and I wonder what causes that because I know that many of the people I've talked to over the years, most starting out authors, myself included, are prone to going that route.
The
And
pantsing route, you mean?
yeah, I'm not sure really what that is. I'm not sure if it's just like I just need to let it flow from within me or something like that. There's something
Yeah.
to that, but I just I've noticed that as a pretty consistent trend in writing. Oh, it seems
Yeah. Yeah,
like
we have a question popping up here.
okay.
Have you ever started a book with a certain idea, and by the time you get to the end, it went somewhere completely different?
Yes, that was God. That was my second. That started off as a NaNoWriMo project. That was my second story where I realized that my main character was the secondary character. I was, you know, I looked at this other person that I thought was the sidekick, and then I was like, oh, she's way more interesting and way more active in this. And that completely redefined kind of where you, like, I wanted to go with it after that. So to answer your question, yes, and it was incredibly frustrating.
But
Um,
rewarding at the end, right? You got
rewarding,
to a
yeah,
new
rewarding.
place.
Mhm. Yeah, being able
Yeah.
to kind of relief of, oh, okay, I understand the story a little bit better.
Yeah.
But yeah,
No, I totally get that. It's unfortunate when you have to go that way, right? You have this great idea, you think it's the golden idea, right? And you sit down to write it, and you get to the end, you're like, well, that was in the same orchard, but that apple is way over there that I started with, you know?
yeah, you see a bigger, shinier apple, and you're like, well,
Yeah. Now I think we're touching on creation process right now with some of these questions in the comments, so we'll stick to it. MC is asking, do you create your characters first?
um, you know, it's kind of a, I don't really know how to answer that question because I believe that story and character are really intertwined, and then when you start developing one or the other, it kind of just melts together. I start with a general story idea of, you know, oh, I want this to be maybe like a sci-fi story or something like that. And then it very
Hmm.
quickly turns into what would the people in the story be like? And then it's like, well, why would these people act like this? And it kind of goes back and forth. And sometimes it's the opposite. So
Right.
I hate to be not very clear with that question, but it really just depends on what I'm feeling. I don't really have a set process for that because it's just kind of whatever feels best. Does the setting feel more vibrant, or does the person feel more vibrant starting out?
Right. Yeah, and I think it's important to point out too that that setting is a character. A lot of people don't like to they like to think that the setting could be whatever as long as they're telling their story. But I feel that I mean, especially for me and in this in my story, and I know for what we're going to talk about very shortly with you, the setting is quite important.
Yeah,
And it's its own character when it comes to the world. You can't have a story within a world that doesn't move without them.
yes, I completely agree with that. It kind of needs to, and some people take it, yeah, it can be taken a few different directions. There are some ways to present it in a more literary way. I think Murakami's Wind Up Bird Chronicle is a good example of that because it's, very much like this character who I won't give anything away. Everybody should read that book. And if I say anything about it, it ruins a lot.
Okay.
But check it out. It's kind of like an urban fantasy thing. And but anyways, so that one was very um, it had this sort of magical, disorienting, dreamlike feel to it,
Yeah.
and it very much altered the story in, yeah, like you said, its character is very important and interactive. It's and that one specifically, it feels very like it was breathing in
Yeah.
some ways.
And MC, not to discount character creation first at all by any means, because I think it's very important that if you have a great character in mind, you can easily build the world around them too.
Yes.
Because especially I would say especially for those who are working on like superhero or detective, you
Mhm.
know, stories where the character is pretty much like the main thing. We don't read a detective story for the murder. We read the detective story for the detective, right? And we don't read it for the city necessarily. We watch Batman for Batman, not for Gotham City, even though Gotham City is amazing.
Yeah, I mean, there are some books like have you read The City and the City by China Miéville?
I haven't, no.
That one I read for the murder because it
Oh,
was,
okay.
yeah, it was, and there were some like Dresden Files where
Oh,
Dresden,
yes, Dresden Files. Yeah,
but The City and the City, that's another great example of a setting that is very much like its own beast. Um, but yeah, oh man, I had a thought. I'm sorry, I totally lost it. It was something kind of important. It'll come back to me.
that's okay. Dan is saying he seems to remember saying somewhere, sometime that he likes to create almost random character types and then put them in an impossible situation.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. Oh, yes, yes, he did say that. And uh, and also, you're touching a lot on Stephen King. Oh, yeah, he Stephen King is very much he likes to torture his characters, which I think a lot of authors say that like imagine the worst thing that can happen to your character. Now go one step further, um,
Yes.
but and that makes sense. But I mean, especially for you, I love that you mentioned you read that book for the murder because, and as we mentioned earlier, you're very much of you love the dark and the macabre,
Mhm.
and and I'd love to touch on that. How did you get drawn to the genre of horror when it comes to your podcast we're going to be mentioning and your other stories?
Because there's a lot to horror is one of those things where it's incredibly, prevalent in fiction because people have the mistaken idea that it's very easy to do. Like, oh, I came up with a scary monster, and then they just describe the scary monster, which, in and of itself, is it's not a bad thing. I'm not discouraging anybody if you're starting off doing horror. Like, do your thing. Don't like take this as gospel or anything like that. But there's a lot of nuance that gets missed in many, many horror stories. And that's why, Stephen King is one of those people who he can be really over the top with a lot of the stuff he does. But he's
Hmm.
such a good storyteller that it's kind of like, well, I forgive him for whatever this weird character sounds like. Um, but oh geez, what were we talking about, Lane?
What
I'm
drew
sorry.
you to horror and the macabre?
Right. Yeah, mind was wandering there.
That's okay.
Um, yeah, what drew me to horror was it's just very like when it's done well, it's very complex and very visceral and very there's a lot involved in it when it's done really well. You know, you can have a story, a horror story that touches on, you know, like what it's like to struggle with mental illness, or you could have it
Hmm.
with somebody who's dealing with something like horrible that has happened to them. And some people do that for shock value, and I don't appreciate that personally. I don't think that you know, make what you want, but it just feels bad to kind of do things with like a flippant attitude.
Hmm.
Uh, but that's kind of my main draw to horror is that there's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of honesty in it. Because people can, you know, really dig into these darker aspects of themselves or these ideas that they've had. And it's, yeah, in a bizarre way, I just appreciate that honesty. I like that.
Yeah.
I come into it. I like, you know, being scared too, but it's also when you know, come up with a really scary idea, you know, like some of these things you wouldn't just bring up in a conversation. You know,
Right.
you're talking to people, but when you put it out there, it's you. It's this idea that you've had, and it's you know, all ideas are, but that's really that's kind of what drew me to the genre in the beginning. That and
Right.
food.
Now, now, if you don't mind, I'd love to read the blurb that you sent me for your podcast, and we'll move into that
Oh yeah.
a little bit. So Jonah Escher, a depressive man with an obscure past, abandons his life and responsibilities in an attempt to outrun his inner demons. After stopping to rest at a strange hotel in the small mountain town of Dodgson, he finds himself trapped in a personal hell. Accosted by terrors from within and without, Jonah must navigate the endless, nightmarish corridors of the hotel if he wishes to escape.
Mhm.
So, Zach, tell us more about this podcast and this hotel, and what made you even think of this idea in the first place?
It's really, it's kind of a personal story. Not that I was trapped in a haunted hotel,
I would
but
hope not.
no, yeah, that would have been rough. But you know, as somebody, yeah, I've struggled with problems in the past, like depression and things like that, and I wanted to tell a story that kind of felt like those things, those negative thoughts, those negative feelings, and I felt that this was the best way to do it. I don't know why,
Hmm.
but it was, and it's very, you know, it's pretty symbol heavy. It's very symbolic in a lot of ways. But I wanted to do something that felt that communicated those things, that communicated those feelings, and communicated those experiences. And bizarrely, I landed on horror for that. I could have just said like, "Oh, here are some things," but I wanted to do something that was more. Uh, in a way, it's abstracted from reality, but it's also closer in a lot of ways. It's a very
Hmm.
intimate story. So I landed on a lot of these symbols, like specifically. Did I cut out for a second there?
You
My
did cut
screen
out
went.
for a second there. Yeah, that's
Okay.
okay.
Anyways, so specifically with the hotel, a hotel is a place where you stay for a day or two. It's honestly, you know, a place where you're supposed to stay forever.
Right.
And I kind of saw depression as like that. It's a lot of people can get past like moments of sadness. They can get past, not past. I'm not, you know, everybody goes through. So I'm not invalidating anything. I want people to,
Right. Yeah.
but you know, it's not something that uh, you know, a lot of people hold on to for extended periods. Whereas something with depression, it's, you know, they say sadness is a storm and depression is a season. And that's kind of where the symbol of the hotel specifically came from. It's something that you can get in and out of, but in this case, no, you're trapped. And you know, it's very it feels impossible to get out of. You know, it's labyrinthine. It's uh, yeah, like that's kind of where this entire idea started out is a analysis of self. And people I've talked to, you know, it's people, you know, thoughts and feelings that I've had, but also people who are close to me and that sort of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it for that. Um,
Right. And I want to touch a little bit more on the representation and inspiration behind it because,
mm,
as you know, for my book, it deals a lot with disability and chronic illness and both visible and invisible illnesses and I felt it very important to do the the research and the conversations with people who, if it's not for myself, as you know, I have a chronic illness as well, Crohn's, and a few other things that that will come up in the book, but it's really important to me to get that representation to be true, and I did so in such a way that should anybody ever question anything in the book, I can tell them respectfully that I've done my work behind it, and I trust that this is true representation. While it might not represent you, it represents someone who is of the same cut from the same fabric, if you will. Now, of course, that also shows that all illnesses are different in every person. So I think that's also the interesting thing is there are characters in the book who have the same issues. They face the same problems, just in different ways.
Yes.
And I think that's a really important thing. And can you talk a little bit more about the inspiration behind using these symbols and getting it into this podcast and creating these characters and the representation and the research you did to get it to this point?
My cat is screaming at me. There is, somebody just said, sorry I didn't catch your name. My name is Zach. Good to meet you. Is there a dose of self-help in your book with those suffering from depression? That is, it's not a very positive story. It's about hope at the end of the day. That's what I try to get across. But it's very much it's pretty bleak, it's pretty dark. And the way I got through a lot of stuff was emotional cauterization is what I call it. There are many people who, they approach, there are trigger warnings on things. I understand those. Some people have incredibly traumatic experiences that they've gone through. But I went the opposite route when I was, going through my stuff in terms of the, self-help and stuff like that. It was very much just facing things very, very, very head on and looking at them honestly and looking at them in a hard way. So with my show, it's going to be, it's not going to be very much like, here's what you can do to, help yourself. It was a lot of my journey, but it's also it's confronting things. It's confronting demons in yourself. So, I can say right here, the best thing to do yourself is my base piece of advice. Forgive yourself. There are so many people who suffer with these things. Like, don't hold on to things. It's very easy to start like hating yourself and that sort of thing. So while I don't have messages quite like that in the upcoming show, I can personally say, do your best to be kind to yourself. But all right, I mean, this is generally, but do you ever worry that representation in books is devalued by stereotypes? Yes. I'm sorry, Lane. I don't mean to ignore your question.
Go for it. No, go for it. Yeah, answer it if you can.
I do feel that representation, like with stereotypes, it can be incredibly harmful, and it's easy to, stray into those things because it's what people understand. Kind of like, at a cursory glance. Oh yeah, absolutely. You're welcome. But it's the problem with stereotypes is that it doesn't allow for complexity. It's easy to look at things like when you see somebody who is, in media, they're highly depressed, or maybe there's like a self-harm involved or something like that. It's very easy to just show, somebody who's like very secluded from everybody, or they're very, they lock themselves away in their room. But some of the people who've struggled the most are some of the most outwardly positive people I know. And I won't name any names, but I have a very, very dear friend, and she's incredibly kind and sweet, and just good and wholesome and wonderful to everybody around her. She's just a ray of sunshine in a sometimes dark world. But she also struggles very, very much with very dark thoughts. And so I think that by strafing into stereotypes into whatever it is, physical illness, mental illness, or otherwise people who are differently abled, it doesn't allow for nuance or critical analysis. It kind of just says like, oh, here's this character and here's what they do. And there's so much more to it than that. You know, there's a lot. I think that people before they, I really suggest that people before they put anything into their book, like, you know, you, like you said, you did your research and you've talked to people with the delivery co and, you know, talking about things they've gone through. I think everybody needs to do that. Talk to people, read about, you know, the things people go through. I think I told you this story, Lane,
Yeah.
but, you know, another thing was there was a writer that I worked with, oh God, years ago. I keep on forgetting that time works linearly. Um, but he was blind. You know, he struggled with that. I shouldn't even say struggled with that. He had a good life, a very happy person. But you know, when he was writing, one of his characters was blind in his story, and I remember in the feedback publicly, people were like, "This will like, you know, like they're like, oh, you're making him like a superhero because he could like, you know, quickly get across his house and get something or find something." And he's like, "I am blind. I can do these things. Like it's not, you know, I'm not bumbling helplessly through the dark. Like I am perfectly capable of doing this stuff." So yes, stereotypes or you know generic characters, don't do it. Talk to
Yeah.
people, do your research because they will love you for it in the end.
Right. And I think I'd love to add to that is that just because somebody is differently abled doesn't mean they're not able. They just do things differently.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. That is
You know.
100% correct.
So and Zach, if you don't mind, a slight detour, but not really, in the
Yes.
same vein. Um, I would actually love, without giving anything away, if you could maybe mention, because of how close we've gotten with story development and such. For those of you who are watching, Zach has actually been very helpful in helping to hone in some of the character story elements within the book. And I would love for you to mention how you feel about some of the characters in the delivery company and how they still, you know, your thoughts on them without sharing too much, obviously.
Yeah, I won't. I don't worry. I won't give it a. Won't give your stuff away. Um, there were like in terms of you know the people you created is that I do like that they feel you know, one of your main characters, Sticks,
Hmm.
is I liked him quite a bit when we came up, just because of that whole you know addressed you know what he was going through and show like he deals with this. This is a thing that he has. However, he's very smart and he's very capable, and he's able to do those sorts of things. Same thing with a character named Scorcher. Who I won't give anything away because I don't know precisely how much you're willing to get into all of that.
Right.
But I think there was you know something that he you know deals with, and he was saying that it's because of a different thing. Do you remember that? I don't want to give
Yes.
anything away,
Yeah,
but
no. So yeah, the character he's talking about has an issue that he deals with, but it's not from what everybody assumes it is. It's actually caused by something else. But he has both, you know, physical and mental, you know, things he struggles with. So it's not just all on the outside like it is with some characters.
yeah, and I like you know I just like that there's you know you don't have people you know with like you know you have Seymour and Scorcher, you have Sticks, you have everybody in Tent City. And there's a, I like the sense of like, we're okay. We're doing our own thing. Like we kind of, you know, we're fighting back against these people because they're really bad folks. But it feels like, you know, they're kind of, we work together, we're family, and you know what? We're not looking for handouts. We're not looking for, you know, we can do all this stuff. We're good. And I like that. I like that quite a bit. I don't, you know, it's not like somebody's, uh, you know, you don't have these characters feeling helpless in the world. They're kind of the
Right.
opposite. Like they're kind of like, yeah, we're gonna kick some butt now.
Yeah, if
Um,
anything, these characters definitely go out of their way to not be helped. Like
mhm,
they go out of their way to help others actually
mhm.
instead, which is a really nice thing. And I appreciate you giving your insight on the characters in my book, even though that was a little bit off topic, but I just wanted to touch on that since we were talking about representation, and I know that you know enough to give it, you know, a thought. So, um, but we are stuck in this hotel. We are dealing with these issues. we are talking about the dark and the macabre, and I don't know, I don't think we've touched more on where this is going. What is this going to be? We've talked about the idea itself, but give us an idea of what is this podcast? Is it going to be an episodic story adventure, or is it going to be a one-time thing? Give us a little more information on that.
It's a serialized story featuring yours truly doing the audio editing, acting, and everything else, which is terrifying. But it's what was I'm sorry, what was the
That's okay. No, I'm just asking for just basically give us a rundown of what to expect when we get to it. Like when we see it, is it going to be like you said, it's going to be
right?
serialized, and
Yeah,
then
it'll be I have a planned number of episodes. It's going to be a story that ends. And it's
okay,
not going to be a lot. It's probably going to be about 12, unless one of them needs to be cut in two. That one I'm struggling with near the end. But it's going to be a serialized story. It's one story all the way through, with each episode picking up where the last left off. I'm hoping to release every month, but who knows? I'll release it whenever I want. The first one's coming up January 1st, but I'm kind of like, when it feels right, that's what I'll do.
right.
Uh, but yeah, it's my whole plan with it is to do one story, one and done. It's not going to be something that goes on for years or anything like that. That's my plan, is to do just through, and then there's a finish line. Uh,
Hmm. Now, I would also love to know what does it feel like narrating your own story when this story is so close to you?
I've been thinking about that a lot actually when as I've been, writing and prepping for this uh, it feels good. It feels scary. It feels very scary because not only am I releasing work, but it's me saying it out loud. I've written it, I'm acting it, and it's everything involved. So it makes me feel pretty vulnerable, actually. I'm opening my heart to a lot of people, which is a kind of terrifying experience.
Right.
But it does feel, it feels right. It feels good. It's not like I'm looking at this and going like, oh, should I do it? No, I want to. I want to do it. But yeah, it does feel, being kind of that intimately involved with it is, it can be a little nerve-wracking at times. It can make me, like question, a few times like, should I hire somebody? But no, it's got to be me at the end of the day.
Right. So can you talk about, I have a couple questions that I was given on my story before we got on tonight. And then I'm going to go ahead and say to open up more questions from those watching, if
Mhm.
anybody has any for Zach. Also, real fast before we get to those, MC had asked if I had felt confined to young adult, being that I write in that. And to answer that question, I do, but I don't. I know that when I'm coming up with story ideas, I know that if it's going to be a young adult, in that genre, then the ideas kind of come in that vein. They don't tend to stray too far from that. And I feel like a lot of my ideas tend to be of that genre anyway. So it just worked out really well for me that young adult was there. I don't feel like I come up with many ideas that wouldn't fit well into that genre. So I definitely don't feel confined by any means. So that's your answer. But um,
And
we have
having played Dungeons and Dragons with you in the past, I can say that you do have a great mind for whimsy and fun, which I think translates pretty directly.
Thank you. Yeah, I've actually. It's funny that you say that. I brought up Dungeons and Dragons as a comparison with a few authors off and on throughout the series, but I think it's a really great tool for writers actually because when you get into a story that's not yours and you have to be a character within a world that you did not create, but
Hmm.
you're still helping to create a story. It's
Hmm.
nice. You're creating your own story within somebody else's world, and I think that's it's a good little exercise for those who mostly focus on putting words onto the page instead of acting it out. So
Yeah,
I would definitely recommend giving D&D a try if you haven't.
it is quite fun.
Yeah. And if you do play D&D, feel free to drop your class and such into the comments. Would love to know what you play as. Um,
Oh man.
so, Zach, what do you love most about being a story consultant, and do you like that more than working on your own stories?
Yes, I do actually like it more than working on my own stories, which was also kind of a hard truth I had to face because my phone is going to die, Lane. Give me just a moment.
That's okay.
Okay, so, all right. So to answer that question, yes, I actually do enjoy working with people a lot more than my own stuff. Not to say that I don't like generating ideas,
Of course.
but I'm, I'm very sociable and I love talking with people. And, my biggest thing was I want to be a storyteller, but I consume stories and I consume them ravenously. And by, talking to people and getting to learn their, what they're writing, I also get to kind of peek inside their head. And I get to, it's kind of an intimate thing when somebody creates something. And I
Yeah.
love that. I've met a lot of really awesome people just in life over time. And I can say honestly that I just, love doing that. I love talking stuff out and generating ideas and just having a good time and laughing. And, sometimes things like we go on tangents or whatever it is. But yeah, I would say that, I very, very much like working with people. I'm an extroverted introvert. I need my time to recharge, but if I don't start talking with people, I start getting itchy.
Yeah. No, I totally understand that. And JM, thank you so much for appreciating the Christmas background. It's one of my favorite things about the series. Um, so Zach, Maple Line Fiction is asking, where can we find you? Is Instagram your main platform, or is there somewhere else that you are more active?
Instagram is my main platform. I am not I know it's suicide in this world, but I don't really enjoy social media that much. I post my art here from time to time, but it's just one of those things where it's really overwhelming and I don't like your native stuff. On Instagram, I can just follow artists and authors, and that makes me happy. So, yeah, this is pretty much the only place you'll be able to find me. My own website will be going up. I already have the domain, I just need to get it online is Lantern and Labyrinth dot Productions, and that should come out around the same time as my podcast to start showcasing work or other shows or anything else I'm working on. But yeah,
No,
um,
that's great. Yeah, and I totally understand the social media thing. It's in today's day and world, in today's society, it's very easy to get overwhelmed by the number of social media platforms and just everything that you could possibly be on. And there's a lot of people out there who are running very successful businesses as authors, and they are on every single platform, and good for
mhm.
them. But I'm not one of those people. I try to use the Facebook and Instagram. And that's about my main thing. I tried blogging for a bit on my website, but I turned that more into a updates thing. Although I'm hoping to start a monthly newsletter in the new year. Um,
Lane, you
just
told
because
me you had a website. Wait.
yeah, exactly. So
Mm,
it's literally lanenorthcutt.com. It's yeah. So I've had the
oh,
domain.
cool.
Actually, I use it. I used to use it primarily for my acting and such. So that's what it was. It started as, and then I slowly moved it. I'm trying to transition it over a little bit more so it focuses. Still has the acting, my resume, and my some of my reels and such, but it's got some more more writing stuff there. And MC, yes, I do TikTok actually, and I just started doing it. I don't know. I'd say I really got more into it about a month ago. Thanks to my wife, I would have not gotten into TikTok at all if it weren't for her. And I actually had a TikTok like blow up 2 days ago. It's over 9,000 views and it's got over 1,000 likes. And it's me unboxing my copy from Ingram
Nice.
Spark. So um, it's really great. And TikTok is actually really great for authors now too. It's a good marketing platform. I don't know for how long we'll have it, but it's definitely a great marketing platform for as long as it's around. So um, Zach, Dan is asking, what software or tools do you use to create your podcasts?
For writing, Scrivener. Scrivener. Everybody use it, please. which is why I'm giving it away. And for the audio, FL Studio, actually, which is bulky and expensive and very good. Audacity also works wonders for audio cleanup and stuff, which one of my friends showed me. It has its own issues, but FL Studio and Scrivener are kind of what it is. I have my microphone up here. I believe it's an Audio-Technica AT2020.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah, it's a pretty good mic. But yeah, between those two, it's pretty much everything. As time goes on, I'll probably amass a huge number of, pieces of hardware and software. So we'll see. Who knows what it'll turn into? I'm probably going to start padding my walls like a crazy person, trying to get everything that's completely soundproof. It's not possible.
Yeah.
You can't sound
like a dungeon. But
yeah.
on that, do you know where your podcast will be available when it launches? Is it going to be on Apple Podcasts as well as all the others, or do you have only one place you're putting it?
It'll be on Apple Podcasts. I needed to just set up an RSS feed to shoot it off to Apple Podcasts and Pocket Casts and Raincast. I don't know what that one's called. I think that's the right one. But I'm going to try to release on every platform because I know everybody has their preferences for stuff. So I'm going to say now, as many as I possibly can. I'm going to figure that out post haste. Yeah, so anywhere. You can find me anywhere. Just, look outside. I'll be there somewhere. Probably.
Great. Now, Zach, before I do the giveaway tonight, we are giving away Scrivener. So I would love for you to just give us one more little tidbit about you. Just repeat the title of the podcast and where everybody can find you while I run the generator here.
The title of the podcast is The Halls of Nihil, Nihil. And you can find me here at Instagram at The Lantern Witch, where I do my art and stuff like that. Also, a lot of my stuff is not safe for work. So, if you have sensitivities or, you're not big on certain things, just avoid some parts of my art. But there's, just a heads up with people. And it's pretty much just here for the time. It's right here on Instagram.